Alrighty, what is up guys? Today we are going to be chatting about how to make a build-up. Just trying to simplify this process for you guys a little bit because I know this was something that I struggled with a while ago. Just trying to I don't know, even up until kind of recently, I just didn't really know how to approach them and what were some good techniques to kind of and good steps to take and good things to kind of look out for when I'm doing them. So this gives us a good opportunity to kind of go through. I've got a little bit of melody here, and we're just kind of going to build around that. We're not going to be doing anything too substantial in terms of building a track. I just want to have a little melody base that I can show you guys how to add percussion and effects and all those sorts of things. Just things to look out for and what we can sort of make along the way and what things might work and might not work going into this process. So if we dive straight in, as you can see, we've just got the one melody here, and we can go ahead and listen to that real quick. Cool, so there's the melody there, and I don't really have an idea of what we're going to do just yet. I kind of want to go into this and just have a crack on the fly and just sort of walk you through what I would do in this situation. So I guess the first thing that I want to do is kind of just bar out what we're going to be doing here. The drop you can see here is this is how this is sectioned out. The drop's going to be here, so let's just put a little marker in there just so you guys have an idea what we're doing. So build up can potentially start here. And this is just going to be our little lead up. So it'll be your verse or whatever comes in before your build up. So I've kind of made a little checklist of what I would be sort of looking for when I'm looking to do build ups and stuff. The first thing that I usually kind of look for is, I guess we're going to start feeling what sort of drum pattern is going to happen, because essentially we're often going to be using each build-up is going to be different depending on what we're doing and what kind of song it is and how you want to go about it creatively. So it's this is just going to be a really sort of leaning into which elements, leaning into the different elements that we can use. This might be overdone for what you might want to do, but this is all the different things that you can use and just things to listen out for energy wise, because I suppose this is the main purpose of a build up is to transition between a verse or a breakdown into a drop. So we're trying to create tension. We're trying to create a transition. So whether that be introducing drop layer elements, whether that be getting rid of some verse layers, changing chord patterns, changing progressions, but for the most part, if it's going to be something melodic, I'm kind of choosing something melodic so I don't just do a heavy thing, because this kind of gives you a more in-depth idea. Because I suppose if you're doing something heavy, you're often just going to have the one note that's just going to sit on the root note, and that's going to be fine. When it comes to melody and you're going through a progression, oftentimes what I will do, as I'll show you here, is you want to a way to create suspense is by sticking to a root note. So when you go in, I'll show you right here, if you have we've got a chord progression here, and as it gets to the build up, the way to create tension is to repeat things, and that's usually by repeating the first bar, and then repeating that, halving it down again and again and again. So if we go in here, we start repeating. So you kind of get that idea, right? How when it starts repeating itself, it starts to become a little bit more suspenseful because nothing's happening. You just kind of get suspended on that note, on that certain chord of the progression. So that is one way to start creating tension. So it's usually what I'd sort of look for first, is try and figure out how we can start creating some tension out of the elements that we already have. Now we're going to look at sort of adding in what kind of drums we want. We're going to usually add in a snare. Most of the time that's what you're going to kind of add in, or a kick that's going to start repeating over itself. Just your typical kind of drop sounds. So I'm just going to add it all into this section here just so we can kind of see it all. I usually have it broken down into break drums and effects and all that sort of stuff, but you can create your own build up. Sometimes I'll have like just a group that's just going to be purely for build up elements. So we're just going to create it inside here. So what we can do is just kind of, I'm hearing just a snare that's going straight on the beat, right? On the quarter notes. Or on the whole notes, not even sure. Now, the interesting thing about this is we're trying to figure out which is the right snare is always kind of difficult. So, and whether we want to questions are if we want to filter it in or not, or if we just want to have it come straight out of the bat, right? And the other thing is, real quickly, just while we have this melodic element going on, what we'd often do is open up a cutoff filter here, right? So this cutoff here, we can macro that if we want, just to make things a little bit clearer. Just going to name this cutoff. I can use that. So there are a number of different sort of it really depends on what kind of energy and dynamic again that you want to incorporate here. This is one way to kind of do this. You can build it up, and then as everything starts to build up more, so you can start to dim it down, and then once you get halfway again, you can really bring it back up, or you can just have it go straight up like that if you wanted to. Which is also kind of cool. I sort of want it to, I'm feeling this at the moment. So that's kind of what I'm feeling melodically and cutoff wise. Another thing you can do if you're doing something like this sound, you can actually play with the detuning, and we can or macro that as well. So because the more detuned it sounds, the more intense it kind of sounds, and the more crazy it sounds. So that's always a really fun thing to play with. I don't know if I love the... I think that sounds a little bit nicer than the other option. The other option is to just do this. Let's keep it that way. We might figure out what we want to do But later on, we can change this, obviously. So doesn't sound as intense though when we do it that way. So I'm just gonna keep it with those right now. I think those sound the nicest. So cool. So now we've got like the detune and the cutoff kind of like worked out a little bit more. So it's like kind of ebbing and flowing with the tune. With the track, again, you can change this to your tune, however like yours kind of is working. So we'll just keep moving on from here. Let's try and figure out some sort of, I guess, snare pattern, what we're going to work with. I think this is going to be a pretty simple one. So one way that I like to choose my snares is by playing the like music and then auditioning the snares, like clicking the snares here while the music's playing, because then you get an idea of how this snare is going to sound with the music in the background, as opposed to just listening to the snares by themselves and being like, that's a cool snare, but it might not necessarily work with the music itself. So that is one thing to try and sort of play with. So if we press play, you can kind of hear now like what the snares sound like when the music's playing, as opposed to going and having no reference when you're just playing them by themselves, right? So I'm gonna loop this section. Okay, so I think those two snares kind of sound nice with the music playing. Again, this is all like kind of personal preference stuff, so. So I'm gonna layer these up a little bit and sort of see what they sound like. So kind of like the tail in this, where it's like ka ka ka, and I really like how the snare just kind of fits in with the sound, like the main body of the snare fits in with the rest of the music. Oh, don't need that on there, that's for sure. So if we want to, we can EQ some stuff out, because it's going to be taken up by that. If we really want to, we can clean this up a lot more by taking out the transient. We'll see what that sounds like. So I don't mind getting rid of that transient. It kind of sounds like kind of nice. So what I'm hearing at the moment is this is going to be filtered out. What I might do is actually put these in the drum section. Do I want to do that right now? I'm gonna keep this all in the one bit so you can kind of see it all and keep an eye on it. Snare. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna filter that a little bit. Cool, so that sounds pretty sweet. I like how that's fitting in. I like how, I mean, it obviously sounds like super raw dog right now, but we're gonna make like transition elements that are gonna make this like kind of fit a little bit better. You hear how that's kind of giving it that rhythm, that like kind of energy that it needs. It's starting to anyway. So I'm almost like feeling like there doesn't need to be a kick just yet. But I like to have like transitional elements that kind of like flow between the transitional points, like the main points. So going into this section, for example, this section is going to need another one, potentially this part as well. And then this whole section, which will be the pre-drop and like all that kind of stuff. So what we can do is like, a lot of this to me is just like layering different things. And we'll go over what kind of layers we need, obviously as we go along. So we will do let's do a kick just for demonstration purposes. I'll grab a kick. And what I'm gonna do is I think I'm gonna like do it starting here. And I like to make sure that this is sort of following the snare to a degree, so it's almost like complementing the snare. And you can really use this to your advantage. Like, we'll see what this sounds like as just following the snare. Sometimes you can have it so it sort of flows like this and continues on the same sort of thing and like as it was before, so you're kind of like halving it. And see with this, because you might have like a bit of a cool back and forth between these kicks and snares here. I don't love it when it gets quick though, so I kind of want this to be the same, or I want to like double it here maybe and see what that sounds like. You can do it that way. It just kind of gives you more like elements of sort of change and transition. If you don't want that though, we can just keep it like this. But I kind of like how this works here. And this is really simple. We're not playing with any like fancy rhythms or anything. I mean, we can do this sort of thing if you want. Depending, I'm sort of leaning towards having a more simplistic one at the moment with this art at this point in time anyway. We can add some other rhythms with maybe some other like percussion elements maybe. So now that we have that kick in there, we can actually start side chaining this to the kick so we can move some room, get some room happening. So I can do that with a compressor if we just want to do that real quick. I'm just going to make a Ghost track up here, SC1, and mute that. I'm going to get the compressor to sidechain audio from SC1 at the top here. I do a whole video on sidechain earlier in my Patreon, so go check that one out if you're wondering what I'm doing here. Oh, nope, that's not what I wanted. I'm trying to grab this release there. See how that goes. So I'm kind of hearing like a, well, I mean, we can add our own percussion, but what I like to do now, so the basic idea of like the rhythm in this section sort of thing is kind of like get your foundations down. So we have the snares, we've got the kicks, they're like the big bits and pieces that we want, right? And then what we can go in and do is start adding in like other like loops and rhythmic kind of elements. So if I want to go and add like a percussive loop, maybe, what are we on? We're on 150 right now, so. These are low-key kind of trashy, so let's find something a bit better. Stuff like that's kind of cool. Let's just see this for like demonstration purposes. So we can probably like do this sort of thing. I think maybe this isn't the right spot for me to be looking. I kind of want to go into maybe like my breaks section. Because these are some good spots to try and find like some taiko type things. Or like these are all like layering things that like I don't want to have, like I don't want them to be the main part of the sound. That's really distracting in the moment, so I don't want those there. So what I want from these parts, I don't want this like gap here, so what I might do is either grab this from there and then duplicate that, and then start to duplicate this here. So what I want to like really kind of do is make sure that like my looping and my patterns kind of all match up with each other, so that they're so that they're kind of seamless. So I've got like the kind of toms sorted. Oh, the big cinematic sorted for now, so I'm not gonna like add too much more of those. What I might do is kind of want like a kind of like consistent tom in there. So see how that goes. I kind of just want to like going this fast. I just didn't want it so like low. All right, so let's group these really quickly. I want the kick separate, sorry. Right. So I'm just gonna add a few more tracks. So we're starting to get like a bit of a groove going here, right? Cool. So starting to like have a bit of a vibe there, right? And it's just by like layering a few things in here and there. So we can always add in like a few more like breaksy sort of sounds, like tomsy sort of stuff. I don't think we need to necessarily. There was one, I remember like here, if you have like some cool build up loops already that you have, you can always use them as layers as opposed to anything else. So like it's like this sort of stuff maybe. So you got to remember like you got to keep in mind things like pace as well. So for example, this in the cinematic, like you saw me kind of double it as in like make it faster. So like you got to keep in mind that pace and what that's going to do to your build up, and whether you want that at this time or not. So like, for example, if I was to put this here, I probably wouldn't want this as fast as what it was going. So I'd want this a little bit slower. So you can hear this, like that's pretty intense. So not sure if I'd want that necessarily just there. Maybe in the second half of the build up, that could work, but like it's things to think about anyway. It's just like thinking about the pace, thinking about how quick things are, if the 16th notes, 8th notes, quarter notes, when those things are going to make sense. Like these loops, like this is obviously 100 BPM. So like when you put it to 150 track, like things are going to change. So you just got to be wary of that. So you're trying to find, but it doesn't mean you can't use them. I'm just saying like trying to find things that are also in the same BPM range is kind of useful. Like this could work well. I don't know if maybe it's a little bit high, but let's put that into beats mode as well, so we're not losing any quality. See, it's not really work. That specific sound's not really working for me. Something like that could help though. Maybe not in this context. So again, we can like start to like maybe that could kind of work. So like maybe we can use that. I don't know if I think it works that well, but I think it could be useful potentially. I like the that's the kind of rhythm I was talking about before. It's like a dun, 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 dun. Still good. I hope it's still good. So it adds that kind of groove, you know what I mean? So like, I mean, and these things can be like filtered in as well if you want. So let's grab an auto filter, chuck that over there like that. And another thing to sort of like think about now is starting to look at like the transitions and like drum wise how that's going to work. So like thinking about in your head like how that works for you. So like as we go into this section here, you'll be able to sort of notice that you might need a and like into the next section. So if we listen to this. Right, you want something that kind of like builds you into this next bit. I don't like using fills that are pre-made necessarily. I like using breaks. So things that are like drum loops and shit, and just trying to make something out of them. As I find that they're a little bit more interesting in a way. Like I can use drums from them, or I can use say something like that, and like just grab drums and like double drums and stuff, and in between bits that could really help in this part. So like it's kind of hard to explain, but we'll be able to figure this out. Even that just by itself, right? So it kind of already like is a little bit more interesting than say just grabbing a drum fill from somewhere, like a pre-made drum fill. And then I can grab this and like reverse it and like sort of use. And then I can like distort the shit out of it if I want to. But it's just something, it doesn't need to be like super notable and memorable or whatever. It just needs to be like something that's there. Like, I also want to take this off complex mode, maybe on beats. We'll see if that works. Yeah. Just creates a little bit of like something in between in these little transition bits. So next what we want to look at is maybe start looking at some like effects sort of stuff. So like rises and transitional effects and things of that nature. So we can make our own potentially as like a layer. What I want to do really quickly is actually start to move, like grab some transitional elements, just like reverse sweeps and shit of that nature. So if I go to into FX, into say orchestral drums, which is where all my, you know, that sort of stuff lives. So again, these bits and pieces don't need to be like right in the forefront. I like to layer the shit out of these things. So stuff like this can be cool, just as like impacts. Let's make sure that that initial transient is actually on the beat, on the bar. I kind of wanted that higher pitch. That's sort of what I want for this transition. So you can see how this was like perfectly on grid when this is warped, and complex isn't the best thing to use. So let's see what repitch sounds like. So repitch is going to make it sound a little bit lower because it's been stretched out, but it's not going to lose the quality as much because cool. So there's that stuff going on. I don't really want this, to be honest. Maybe I do. I don't know exactly what I want there. I could remake this, but for like time purposes, I'm just going to leave this. But you can make this out of Kashmir, like orchestral hits and stuff like that. But I probably lean this back a little bit more, so it's just like one or two hits here and there, as opposed to like the whole loop. So it's the kind of thing, as opposed to like, you know, whatever the fuck's going on. And so we can start, like, if we really want to, maybe even start building a riser of our own, and we can make this ourselves a few different ways. I'm just going to use Serum for now and do a really simple one. And let's figure out what key this is in again. I can't remember. Let's pretend it's in E. It's in A. It sounds like it's in A anyway. I'm not going to explain how I figured that out. It just sounds right. It works. I know that works with all the notes that are in that key, so you can hear it. You can just hear it, all right? So I like making little laser whaps as well, but we're going to make a long build-up thing here. So what we're going to do is, the main idea here is to like kind of just have a pitch riser. I'm going to make this go up 24 semitones. So I'm going to crank that up to 24. And then I'm going to, I think I can use that here now. Yeah, in Ableton 11, you can actually automate the pitch bend, which is fucking amazing. That's what we want. So I want this to go up to 24 by then, right? So that's great. And then what I can do is then start messing with stuff. I definitely don't want that. I thought maybe I did. I don't want that fucking chord. That's stupid. So I'm gonna grab a few more voices. Maybe like I'm gonna start automating a macro. And this macro is going to automate a few different things. It's going to automate a filter, cutoff, right? Cool. So you just want to be wary of where that ends. That in if you want, maybe like a flanger. Depending how messed up you want this thing to get. Start automating this shit. I mean, I've maybe tried to reverb filter automation on this bitch, see what happens. You can get crazy with this stuff, it's kind of fun. Right? It's pretty fucking cool. And I haven't done anything really. I've just like automated, I've just like added a macro onto like a bunch of different shit. You can maybe put this on sync if you want and like crank that. That's gonna make it go pretty crazy. But I don't think it necessarily needs it. But that is a option you have as well. What I'm going to do is, we'll just play that once. Cool. So that goes pretty hectic, which is great. Now, we can start adding in some like downlifters and stuff for each transitional period, which is what I want to do next, which will be like down. So if we get a trusty old Cashmere, this kind of stuff's pretty handy depending on where you want it. So it can work there. I think we can use it there. Kind of want a sub downy thing, like that's always got a nice one. The because this one's going to be like the main transition into the build is going to be like the big kind of feeling, and then the middle one we don't necessarily need that much. We just kind of want like shorter bursts, if that makes sense. Then we're going to like start rising things up. So you can do something like that potentially. You know what I mean? Like it's not as intense. Make sure that's on grid. That sounds pretty hectic. That's actually pretty sick. I kind of want to save. I'm going to save that as a. Plank riser 1. It's pretty crazy. Okay, so now we've got a few other like transitional elements going on. So it's like little sweepy things. I'll move this up here so we get it out of the way of our transitions. So this is kind of like our transitional basis. So we group those together. You'll be able to hear it. So now I want a riser to come in here, I think. So if we can find like an up as opposed to a down, that would be great. So we can use that sort of shit here if we want. I'm just going to put that on repitch mode. It's nice and simple. Let's find like a long. Do that one. We want it to stop here though, so we can actually pull this back. So if it stops where we want it to, say right there. We can then cut that like that, and then we're going to put this to say repitch mode again. Yeah. So this is what we're going to need to do is kind of tidy this up. And because there's a bit of a tail on the end of it, what I usually do is grab a utility and just automate the mute. Easiest way, because you go like that, and boom, it's done. Off. And you're not messing with the channel bits, because this, you don't want to fuck with, I'd rather not fuck with these automation wise, because that fucks with mixing. I just want to keep that separate. Cool. So there's that. We could probably add something else that's like a little bit more high-endy. Barely hear that one, so I maybe want to grab this one again. We want to shorten that up so it's fitting nicely. Cool. It sounds fine as it is. I'm just going to repitch that, so that's all good. Right, so before we get too far, we can go like pretty crazy with this sort of shit. But now we've got the little pre-drop bit. So with this like little drum fills and stuff, same sort of principle as here. I would probably add in something pretty damn similar here right before the build, potentially, depending on what you want to do. You could just like have an idea in your head about what you want the rhythm to be, and then you can create it yourself. I like using these sorts of elements as like, again, same with what we've got up here. We've got like our main elements here, and then these are all the supplementary elements that are going to like help it. So this is going to be the supplementary sort of element, because they're like the loops and shit. So if I have an idea in my head of how I want this build up to actually go, or how I want this fill to go, whether there's going to be kicks and snares and all that kind of stuff in there, I can fill those in. So new. Say like that. So this bit here, I kind of maybe want something like this. Actually, this little bit here as a pre, I want to separate this because what I'm going to do now is actually silence this whole thing. Like, it really depends what we're trying to do here. So what I'll often do is make, I'm just going to recall fill. It's looks stupid because caps lock was on. Fill. We want to kind of like affect these all together, and usually these will all be in like one sort of big mess of things like this, like big group kind of thing. So I'm going to group all that, and this is going to be like our build up, because I'm not including the melody in there because it's not necessarily part of our build up. That would be like separate to like, that would be like part of the fucking instruments, the break instruments, whereas this is our build up instrument stuff. So, but in saying that, you know what, we can do fucking all of it together. You know what, screw it, because I kind of want it all together as well. So what we're going to do is make our own like endless smile, or like, you know, rack that's going to cover low end filtering as well as like gluing, as well as like a little bit of reverb. So easy kind of, I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. So what we want to do is, you know, we want to get rid of some of the low end as this goes up, right? So we want to automate it so it goes and starts to get rid of low end as we go along. The next thing that I want to do is have a little bit of reverb come in as we do that as well. And third thing I want to do is kind of glue all that together, maybe with like a OTT, and kind of make it like really crush as I go along. And then let's keep it at that. You can add in your own things if you want to, like delays and shit like that. I'm going to keep it at this for the moment. I'm going to make a little rack out of it. Oh, actually, I want to add a utility so I can like adjust the gain and the mute and all that sort of stuff. So let's make a rack out of that. I'm gonna start macroing shit. So I'm gonna send the filter to macro. Everything's gonna go to one macro, right? Valhalla Room, I want the mix to go to macro one as well, because that's what I want to be automating. And then I want the amount of this to be going to macro one as well. So this at the same time will automate all of those three things. So but this is going to be doing a little bit too much, right? So at 100%, what I want, I got to figure out what I want at 100%, right? So when it gets to this stage up here, how much do I want to be affecting? So at the moment, this is taking out the entire fucking thing, right? And that's not what I want. So if I go to the auto filter, I want the max at 100% to only be taken out up to about like 350, okay? So that's not getting rid of the whole fucking sound, it's just getting rid of that low end. You could even go lower than that. Valhalla Room, which is the reverb, what I want to do is probably do about like 80, 70, 80%, like nothing, not full. And then OTT, I can probably do to about 65. And I'm going to actually want to put the output up on that, as it's going to pull it down, pull the level down as I pull it up. See, Even then, I think the mix of the Valhalla room's a little bit too much, so we're going to pull that down. But that's a really quick and easy sort of rack that you can save and use. You can do whatever the hell you like with that as well. You can add a crystallizer in there if you want to. You can add like other delays in there. You can add like distortion if you really want to kind of go crazy, but I probably wouldn't do that necessarily. So what this is going to do is we're just going to quickly automate this so that it's on 0 here and goes all the way up to here. And then what I like to do as well is actually create some movement here by pulling this back up. And what I might do is actually pull up this decay a little bit more. So hopefully what happens is it goes up, sucks down, and then pulls back up again after. All right, so sort of did it to a degree. I kind of wanted to only do it here. Right. So the fill I want separate. Cool, now that's good. So what I want to do is also put this mute. Actually, no, I don't want mute, I want to automate the gain here. So I want this to completely go away here, and then I want it to come back up like that there. Right, so it creates its own little suck. Right? So we can pull in some transition-y bits here if we want to. What I like to do is grab effects and go back down to sort of cinematic stuff, or maybe have that there. Maybe have like a hit of some sort. Let's try this one. It's going to be super quick, so it's going to suck in here. And then I'm going to want it to be gone by this stage. So it kind of does this. Right, so got this cool like ebb and flow sort of thing happening. We can probably add the kick reverse here as well, maybe. See how that goes. And then drop. So what this whole thing does here, and especially with the utility, is what it does is actually it creates control over what we're doing. So like we're really cutting out what we need to be cutting out. This is like there's no like crazy tails or anything, because there's a lot of like chaos going on, because we're obviously building the chaos and we want it to like still feel controlled. And that one way we can do that is by adding, is by using the utility well and using the sort of the gain knob by pulling down where it needs to and like adding our own kind of effects with it. So like it kind of sounds like it's crazy, but with the gain knob and being able to use that effectively, we kind of gain control back over the whole situation. And then drop. So this is at least one way that I do it. I would actually probably make something a little bit more like not as stupid with this. So So I might take off, say, like chorus in this. It's actually doing its rising job as opposed to anything else. So I'd probably add that in as well as this, because this is kind of wild. This is just stupid effectsy shit. Right, okay, so there is our build up, I suppose. One thing you could also look into doing is, depending on what's in your drop, you can add in, like if it's a bass drop sort of thing, you can add in bits and pieces of like the bass riff and like arrangement into, like filter it out heaps and put it into your build up, so that like you kind of have this introduction of like the two sides coming into each other. And I think that's like a really effective use. So that like the drop isn't just completely out of nowhere necessarily in terms of like sonics. So if you're adding the sonics, if you're introducing sonic elements from each side while the other's happening, it kind of creates a bit more of a balanced dynamic and less like shock, I guess, to the system when they actually happen. So that is how I would sort of make a build up to a degree. This is kind of like my headspace when I'm like working in this. I hope this helps a little bit for you guys. I'm gonna go to bed. This is like the latest tutorial that I've done. But I hope you guys found this useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.